I can't believe her. Who is this guy? I don't know you. Hey, there's the governor's very own. I'm sorry. The governor's favorite. One up. We'll win to number 3.
It looks like we have a few chairs that are empty. If you want to maybe slide over so that people can fill in. How's the volume? You hearing me okay in the back? Need more volume? Okay. John, where did you go? Okay. Is this any better? This is a new system here, so we're needing to do a mic check. Is that better? A little bit better? Okay, very good. All right. Well, good evening and welcome to our first annual Conservative Legislative Preview. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're going to be exploring several upcoming legislative issues, and we want to work to reclaim common sense principles in our government. We're going to start off with the Pledge of Allegiance, then the National Anthem, a prayer, and then we're going to jump right into legislative introductions and presentations. At the end of the presentations, we will have a short time actually, to take questions and get some answers from the legislators. As you get to hear from each of the elected officials, we hope that you'll learn something new and find topics of interest that will inspire you to get involved in the government of the people. So right now we're pleased to present the American Heritage Girls Troop Idaho 2911 to present the colors of our great nation and state, followed by the National Anthem, which will be sung by Carter Burnenheide, and he was actually also playing in the foyer there for us. You can come forward.
Color guard, attention. Those not in uniform, please place your right hand over your heart. Please remove your hats. Color guard, forward march. Color guard, halt. Color guard, advance the colors. Color guard, prepare to post the colors. Color guard, post the colors. Color guard, salute. Please recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ready, 2. Color guard, reform. Color guard, forward march. Color guard, halt. Color guard, dismissed.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous night. O'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Please be seated. At this time, I'd like to invite Pastor Kevin Skidmore, who's the senior pastor of Boise Church of Christ, to open us with an invocation.
Would you join me in prayer? Holy Fathers, we are gathered together right now. We would like to seek your face. We want to know you better. We pray that you will help us to see you more clearly and to understand your will. We ask, Lord, that we would appreciate to a greater degree the freedom that we enjoy that comes from you. Freedom in this country, freedom to express ourselves freely without any reprise from the government. We are thankful, Lord, for allowing us the privilege of being in this country. Help us never to take that for granted. But more importantly, God, that we would seek leaders. We pray that you would give us wisdom to choose leaders who will ask you for wisdom, who will seek out your righteousness, who will seek justice, and in making decisions will first of all consider your thought and seek out your heart. We pray, Lord, that you will help us to have leaders who will not just lead from a position of power, but to see themselves more clearly as servants of the people, and most importantly, your servants. We pray that you will forgive our country for our pride, our arrogance, and our self-reliance. We pray that you'll help us to, in a massive movement of repentance, that you will create a revival that cannot be stopped in this country. And we pray you'll start with us here tonight. We ask these things in Jesus' name and to his glory. Amen. Amen.
I don't know if I'm the only one that's dripping sweat, but I got an email this morning from Major Giddings telling me that I could not wear shorts and t-shirts. I already have a wife. Okay, my name is Russ Smurns, and I'm the coordinator of the conservative liberty groups in the state of Idaho. Just in brief, that consists of 31 different organizations representing about 15,000 people. And I want to just briefly tell you how I got here. Illinois, Wisconsin, Colorado, Georgia, Oregon, Washington, and thank God, Idaho. It's been sort of a roundabout journey, and I've loved every minute of it, but when I got here, I knew that this was the greatest place in the whole world. And part of the reason it was the greatest place in the whole world is because for the first time in my life, I got involved with politics other than going to the voting booth or bitching at the TV. Did I say that? Wait, wrong word. Yelling at the TV, screaming at my wife, telling me to settle down. So I had to either stand up and speak up or sit down and shut up, and I got involved. Now, the people I got involved with were the legislators. And I found out that we in Idaho have citizen legislators, which means that these people are just like you and I. They have regular jobs. They work 3 months a year as far as the session, and they work 12 months a year as far as the duties and the responsibilities reporting to you. And we pay them for that a grand total of $17,000 a year. Now, I did some of the math on that. I'm not real good at math, but that one I was able to figure out. That works out to about $8.85 an hour if you take what we pay them, $17,000 over the course of a year. To put that in perspective, the average Idahoan earns $18.48 an hour. So we're paying them basically $9.63 less than we pay the average person in Idaho. But I'll tell you what, these people are leaving their jobs, they're leaving their families, they're leaving their homes, and they're coming to work on our behalf. And that brings me to a story. In the year 480 BC, and I know I only have 2 minutes, in the year 480 BC, there was a group of Greeks that fought the Battle of Thermopylae. And you've probably seen the movie or the History Channel where it says the 300. Well, 300 Greeks stood in front of 120,000 Persians. And those 300 Greeks were able to hold off the 120,000 Persians for weeks and months until they were finally overcome, but it took them just forever. But here's the thing about the 300 Greeks. They needed the support of the people behind them. There was a row in front with shields and spears and swords, and they would go to battle. But when they were going to battle, they would turn around and they'd say, "Hey, are you guys behind me or not?" And they were. So in our instance, what we have here in this front row, these legislators are the people in the front line. They're willing to fight the citizens' battle. And what they need is us, the rest of us, behind them to make sure they get their jobs done. And we want to make sure that we have government from the bottom up, not the top down. And that's what these people represent to you tonight. And first of all, thank you all for coming, by the way. I know it's tough to get out sometimes. And I think my 2 minutes are up. And thank you. By the way, this hall costs us $550 to rent. If you feel generous, when you're leaving tonight, you could throw a few bucks on the table over here. And there's free water for everybody. There's 94 bottles of free water. So if you're quick, you can get them anytime you want. And with that, I say thank you.
I'm so excited to be here tonight. My name is Misty Gardner-Karlfeld, and as I look out into this room, I see so many people that I know. I just was thinking, this is the family reunion I want to come to. You know, we start with prayer and the national anthem. It sounded awesome. I'm the Executive Director of Health Freedom Idaho. I've been working personally with many of these legislators to stop the barrage of big government legislation and turn the tide toward pro-business, pro-citizen legislation. It is with great privilege and honor that I will be sharing a little bit about what I know of each of these legislators before they present tonight. First up tonight, we are going to hear from Representative Priscilla Giddings, who represents District 7 of Grangeville, Orofino, Wallace, the second largest district in the state that is nearly 300 miles long, a former A-10 fighter pilot. She currently is a major in the Air Force Reserves, and in fact spent this past fall deployed overseas in support of operations in Korea. She stood up for the Idaho Constitution last year, requesting bills be read on the House floor before being voted on. Isn't that great? Due to her efforts, members of the establishment told her that if she didn't comply, she would be washed out to sea, that this would be the hill she would die on, and the sword she would fall on. They have designated her as the #1 target for the 2018 elections. Tonight, she is going to talk about the myth of conservative Idaho. Representative Priscilla Giddings.
Thank you, Misty. It's been a pleasure working with you and getting to know your team at Health Freedom Idaho. I literally just got off the plane a few days ago from serving overseas, and I sure am glad to be home, because, you know, being gone is actually a really good reminder of how much I truly love Idaho. Unfortunately, the day before I got home, I had an unpleasant surprise waiting for me. A newspaper column in the Lewiston Tribune from the staff who gave me a jeers. They said that since I was too busy off serving in the military overseas, I couldn't possibly have time to come back and serve in the legislature. And they suggested that I should submit a letter of resignation from the legislature. Quite a personal, unexpected attack. But that means I must be doing something right. I can assure you that I am back and I am stronger than ever. There's just something about watching an A-10 footage from some of my colleagues blowing that stuff up overseas that has reinvigorated me to jump back into the fight here locally. And yes, we are in the middle of a political war right here in Idaho. I had a phenomenal experience overseas. I was working in the strategy division of the air operations. Your armed forces are working their tails off right now, primarily because the #1 resource that they're lacking is manpower. But more than anything, they all need your prayers. From what I witnessed and what I learned, I was most shocked by the linkages and the political relationships between North Korea and then Russia and China and Iran and Syria and even Turkey, and how they are also masterfully strategizing a war without fighting. They are all pushing the limits. This is most apparent, as you probably know, in the South China Sea, where the Chinese are pushing the limits of international law by building up islands that are now home to an 11,000-foot runway, missile shelters, hangars for 24 military aircraft. And yet the travel magazines are touting it as a vacation destination for the Chinese tourists. And it dawned on me, this isn't a war like anything I have ever seen. This is literally a worldwide war against truth. So coming back home and jumping back into the legislature, I think about how the war against truth is affecting us here right in Idaho. I've just completed my first year in the legislature, and I witnessed a lot of attacks on truth. I thought I was going to learn how to become a statesman, how to dive into the techniques of good debate and constitutional law. Instead, I was treated like a mushroom. So I started asking lots of questions and started doing my homework. And what I found was quite alarming. #1, Idaho is not that conservative after all. Yes, the people, we the people are conservative, but the governing structure is not behaving like a conservative state. So I started keeping track of all the things that didn't seem conservative to me, or didn't quite align with the Republican platform, and I made a list. And as you can see, I'm well past 30 of the things that I've just saw in the last year in review. And I couldn't fit it all on one page, but this is what we have. We have some great information and handouts up here towards the end or in the middle if you go and grab some of these. So I'll just start off with a few of these because I'm time limited. 1, 2, and 3 starts off with our inability to follow the Idaho Constitution. Jump down to number 19, and we see that 83% of our legislators are registered as Republicans. But when our state was ranked by the American Conservative Union, a nationwide assessment, It revealed that actually 80 of our 105 legislators voted in alignment with Democrats from other states. So I wanted to see the proof. So like a good pilot, I made a pretty chart with lots of colors. And then I had put the nationwide rankings for the last 3 years and then the statewide rankings, every single legislator, and they measure the legislators based on their votes. And you can see the color trend, reds being more conservative Republican. And this starts with the Senate, and then on the back we have the House, and these are over there. Be sure to get one and take a look at it. You can see, just looking at the House, how many reds we have. And then you can start to see how, as they're in longer, the red starts to turn blue. So I started to notice that the legislative process that I learned about as a kid was broken. In our war against truth, I started to notice secrecy. I quickly found out that secrecy and misinformation and top-down government control were all the symptoms of us losing our representative republic right here in Idaho. I went back to number 5, where just last year a bill failed and the Senate wouldn't even be heard. Our executive agencies don't even have to follow open meeting laws. Number 7, a 42-page bill was made available to the public 5 minutes before we were forced to vote on it. Number 8, that same chairman of that committee asked, please don't ask me any hard questions about the bill because I really don't understand it. So that made apparent to me that our committee process is broken. So I made a chart, another chart with lots of pretty colors to show how the committees are actually compiled. This one's over there as well. Unlike what our neighbor states, our Speaker of the House gets to decide who sits on what committees and which bills go before those committees. You can reference number 20 through 23 on this list. But on here you can see I've color-coded their voting record in the committees. And what you find is that those with a conservative record that are red are so isolated that it's impossible to get a conservative bill out of a committee. The system is definitely rigged. So what I've noticed in this past year, I firmly believe that our representative republic is in jeopardy. We have a growing government, a lack of transparency, we are overspending intentionally, and the legislative process is broken, not conservative Republican principles that we wish we lived by. I really think we can get back on track by getting back to just the basics of using the laws that we have and letting the process work the way that it was intended to work. Last year, the Speaker of the House publicly agreed to let go of some of his power and to let the process start working again. I hope he keeps his word. So I have a bunch of bills ready to go. Bills like tax relief and prohibiting government lobbyists from getting paid with taxpayer money. Yeah. Right now, millions of your dollars are going to lobbyists to be able to line their own pockets. It's got to stop. So looking ahead to a preview for this session, you can expect me to keep the pressure up. I will keep working to expose the truth. I will push constituent ideas forward through the proper bill process, and I will keep fighting for the people to be represented. It's encouraging to see so many of you here tonight because it really matters that you guys are concerned about these issues and the future of Idaho. Stay strong, keep the faith, and Godspeed.
They obviously severely underestimated Priscilla Giddens, right? Next up is Representative Brian Zollinger. He's a successful lawyer from Idaho Falls in District 33, a father of 5 and former school board trustee, a USA Idaho Wrestling Association board member, a founding member of the Intermountain Warrior Scholarship Fund, and he has been a mentor and role model for thousands of young athletes. He, along with his legal associate Brian Smith and Representative Ron Nate, organized and filed a lawsuit challenging the governor's unconstitutional veto that prevented the grocery tax repeal this past year. Representative Zollinger is also a target of the establishment because he boldly opposes the establishment in growth of government and insists that the Constitution be followed. Brian is the right guy to give us a legal perspective of the grocery tax repeal process and what to expect next during this upcoming session. Representative Zollinger.
Well, this is awesome, first of all. To look at all of you, this gives me hope, and to listen to Priscilla just gets me fired up and ready to go for this session. I appreciate the kind introduction of Misty. She forgot to mention one thing I'm very proud of. On November 12, 2017, I was given a very distinguished award, an award that I share with the likes of Raul Labrador and Justin Amish from the Daily Kos. I don't even know how you say it, that's how much I pay attention. But I was given the award of the stupid, crazy Republican of the day in the entire United States. I was given the topic of the grocery tax tonight, and I kind of ran this over my 12-year-old son, and he told me everyone would be asleep in about 2 minutes if I stayed to the notes I had. So I'm going to go off script just a little bit here and talk to you as a freshman legislator. We walk in the door, and you're continually bombarded with how great you are, and if you do this right, you're going to be on this committee and leading this committee, and you'll be in leadership someday. And they play to your vanity. They think everybody wants to be a politician, and they're wrong. I consider myself a father. I will never be a politician. I'm a citizen and a father first, and that's the reason I'm there. And I don't plan on being there long, but I plan on getting things done while I'm there. These promises, a lot of the time they'll tell you, to get things done, you have to compromise. To get things done, you've got to form coalitions of people. Sometimes you'll have to vote for bills that you disagree with, so people will vote for your bills. My distinguished colleagues could not be more wrong. Ayn Rand published an article years ago that said, "Doesn't life require compromise?" In that article, she talks about two different types of compromise. The first one, and this is important because anytime conflict arises, the solution seems to be we need to compromise. I disagree with that. The first type of compromise she talks about is the compromise where my wife and I go out to dinner, we're going to dinner and a movie, and I want to see one movie, she wants to see one movie, she wants to go to one restaurant, I want to go to another restaurant. Sometimes we compromise. We both win. We leave entertained, we're full stomach, and we have good food. That's the win-win type of compromise. Those types of compromise are okay, and they're needed in life to keep relationships together. The other type of compromise is, take for example, a thief breaks into your house. You catch the thief. You tell the thief, "Hey, why don't you just take this and I'll keep the rest?" The only person that wins in that situation is the thief. And that's what's happened in this country and in this state with our God-given rights and liberties. We cannot continue to compromise these away. I hate to be a renter to the government in a house that I own. We're all just renters, paying property tax, tax after tax, and it has to end. And I appreciate everyone being here because, like I said, it gives me hope that we're going to end this practice in Idaho. Now on to the grocery tax, really quick. Everyone's kind of familiar with what happened. On March 22nd, the Senate, it began as a small tax bill passed by the House. The bill was sent to the Senate. The Senate amended the bill twice and passed the grocery tax repeal on March 22nd, 2017, and returned it to the House. The amended bill passed the House on March 27th, and leadership submitted it to the governor on March 31st. Now, pursuant to the plain language of the Constitution of Idaho, he had 10 days after adjournment to veto that bill. He didn't do it until April 11th, one day late. Kudos to Representative Nate and Brian Smith. They caught on to this quickly, and we began to meet and decide what to do. We filed a lawsuit that's now titled Nate versus Denny to reverse that decision and force the Secretary through writ of mandamus to recognize the repeal of the grocery tax. Now this is important. The grocery tax, you'll hear people say, well, it's a fair tax because everyone has to pay it. This is one of the most regressive taxes that exist. We're taxing basic necessities, something that people have to live, and it's just flat wrong. And we have to start somewhere, and that's a great place to start. So it's important. It's a regressive tax. It's really inefficient. Just to administer the tax, we waste thousands or millions of dollars because we tax everybody and then we give 3/4 of them a credit. It's just wrong. So this is an important tax and an important first step in reducing burdens on everyday Americans. So the governor vetoes this late. We filed a lawsuit, and the Supreme Court did a few things right. We'll consider it a partial victory. There was a case in 1978 where they decided that the word adjournment somehow meant presentment, not following the plain language of the Constitution, and so for years that stood. The Supreme Court did overturn that Supreme Court case, so we have some sense there. But then they went back to the Organic Act, which existed before the Constitution, which the Constitution replaced, and they said, well, the plain language of the Organic Act really means that all bills have to be presented before to the governor before the legislature adjourns, which is just, again, adding to the Constitution. That was the lost part. So ultimately, we didn't get the grocery tax. My predictions this session, the grocery tax will come early. We will pass the grocery tax. If the governor feels like he should go against the will of the people again, we'll override that veto. We have the votes, and I'm hoping that, and I believe in my colleagues, that they will stay strong and overturn that veto. In closing, a few predictions. This room gives me so much hope. I sit next to Representative Nate up front, and we look at the scoreboard and who votes with what every time. And we look and we say, look at that, 29 to 30 consistent conservative votes. If we only had 2 or 3 more, we could change the tide. And with this room and all of you, we're going to change the tide. We could come into this meeting next year with, let me just take some personal liberties, with the Governor Labrador, Lieutenant Governor McGeehan, and Congressman Fulcher. Can you imagine the leadership we could actually provide to this country? So please continue to do what you do. I appreciate everyone being here. This was amazing. God bless.
Wow, that was empowering, wasn't it? Representative Dorothy Moon is a first-time legislator from District 8 of Salmon, Chalice, McCall, Cascade, Emmett, and Garden Valley. Thank you. Those notes, thank you. Let's see, as a former teacher, special education director, the president of an engineering company, and an all-around gold nugget, last session she blocked an education bill that would have given $3,000 of taxpayer money to hundreds of college dropouts as an incentive to return to school. She recruited 53 legislators to co-sign a letter to Jeff Sessions regarding the injustices of the Bundy trials. Just last month, she met with Forest Service Chief Tony Took regarding land issues. Tonight, she has updates on the topics of lands and her first-hand perspective of the Bundy trials.
Thanks, Misty, and Priscilla for setting this up. This is fantastic. I think it's the first one they've done in the state ever. I'm thrilled to be here to talk to you, and I have been pretty busy this summer. After session got out, I went around in my legislative updates around my district, and I do have the largest district in the state, most beautiful one too. And when I was going around the state, I was talking to folks about land use issues. And as I continued to speak with them, I was hearing about a lot of harassment in some of the Forest Service areas of the Salmon Chalice Forest in particular. So I started asking these people to put it down in paper, and went to the forest supervisor, and I said, we've got some issues here, and I'd sure appreciate some sort of resolution to them. So after about a month and a half, summer continued on, and I kept trying to be involved in the land use issues in the Salmon Chalice Forest. The forest is undergoing a plan update, and it's amazing how we always have to have plans updated when they don't follow the plans that they've already created in 1987 and 88 for the Salmon and the Chalice Forest, respectively. So they create these plans, and they're not implemented. I think about 19% of one of them was. But now we're going to update the plans. And based on the rules from the 2012 planning for the U.S. Forest Service, citizen involvement is critical. It is mandatory. You cannot update a forest plan unless you have citizen input of different areas of grazing. You have to have some miners, you have to have some loggers, recreationalists, socioeconomic folks in there to talk about the business and how we're losing money in our rural communities. And so this planning process, I got involved in and started going to some of the meetings. Well, the committee that was feeding the information or making comments to the Forest Service was called a collaborative. Some of you might have heard that term before. Anyway, so I go to the meeting and they said, yeah, we're going to get all these people involved. I thought, okay, I want to be on the mining one because I'm a gold miner, and they wouldn't let me. And I thought, well, isn't that odd? I'm a voted-in legislator. I do have experience in gold mining, and they denied me that position. They denied somebody who's very high up in this state in recreation, who doesn't want to see roads and trails closed for access. They wouldn't let her on. The one person who has one of the biggest ranches in Chalice was put on the grazing committee, and when he was put on the grazing committee, he said, oh, by the way, you're the one non-voting member in this entire group. And I thought, all right, okay, I'm done with this. So I held some meetings in Salmon and Chalice, the two largest communities in the Salmon Chalice Forest. There were about 50 people at each meeting, and Judy Boyle and Terry Gessrin, two representatives, and Judy's also the House Agricultural Chair. She was at the Salmon meeting, and there were folks who were telling us stories that were absolutely horrific. One gentleman, the one that's most egregious to me, is that he picked up 5 pieces of firewood that had fallen off of someone's truck or trailer who had passed earlier. He got cited for collecting firewood. He was charged $50 a log for 6 logs, $300 fine, had to drive all the way to Pocatello to a federal court, pled out with a misdemeanor and a $75 fine. I do not make this stuff up. And there were more. There were more. These new travel plans for the Forest Service, let's not even go there. But this is called felony trespass. And it's the same thing. Go down to the federal court and plead out again. So as the summer evolved, the supervisor did not resolve any of my harassment issues for the citizens. I've just now started forming a committee. I've got 100 people now involved. We have 6 subgroups, and we called it the Lemhi-Custer Grassroots Advisory. And we're not a collaborative, because every time you collaborate, you give up some of your rights. And we're done collaborating in Idaho. We will advise you on what we need for us. As far as the Forest Service plan goes, and these issues of harassment, I did contact Chief Tony Took. I figured if I'm not going to get satisfaction with our supervisor, I'm going to go over his head, and I did. So I talked with Tony Took for about an hour and 20 minutes. We did get a 5-month extension on the planning process, which we're thrilled because I understand you never get extensions with the Forest Service on anything. So I'm very happy about that. So May 4th is when we cut off the comments on the assessment, and then we get into the plan. I now want to shift gears because when you see situations like what's happening in the Salmon Chalice Forest, that is a cause that caused certain effects. I want to talk about the Bunkerville standoff of 2014. I have 2 constituents of mine. One is Ammon Bundy from Emmett, and the other one is Scott Drexler from Chalice. I know Scott. I've known him for 10 years. He's a good man. He's involved in the community, a contributor to the community. He has sat in jail for almost 23 months, as well as another gentleman back here, Eric Parker, is here in the audience, one of the Bunkerville standoff Idaho detainees. And this man deserves a lot. He's given up almost 2 years of his life in standing up for a common man, a rancher who needed some help. And his lovely wife, Andrea, who if it wasn't for her, people would not have known what was going on down in that courtroom. And so Andrea's a fighter. She's great. She's also having a baby here. She's just found out she was pregnant. But what I wanted to say was about the Bundy situation. Oh, and Tammy's over here too. And Tammy Woods' son, Jason Woods, was also incarcerated for 23 months. He's a veteran of the Army. So what happened is that there were 2 trials, and the first tier folks went through it, and 2 of them in that tier was Eric Parker and also Scott Drexler and Todd Engel from Boundary County. And so there were 5 Idahoans that were incarcerated. After the first trial, we had a 10-2 to acquit. Charges were dropped. Let's try them again. Second trial, 11-1 to acquit. Hey, let's try them again. We got all the money in the world. We got taxpayer money. We can do this all day long. $1.2 million for each person they tried down in the Nevada courtroom. So now they're looking at a 3rd trial. And this is at the end of August. I said, there is no way we can let this happen. And I have been told so many times by Attorney General Wasden, even Raul Labrador, who eventually carried the letter for me to Sessions, that the judicial and the legislative never crosses. Well, it does when you have an injustice going on in the malfeasance that's been occurring in this courtroom. We have nothing else to do but stand up for these folks. And not just the Idahoans, not just the 5 Idahoans, but all 19 who have been incarcerated. So I wrote a letter, pinned it the first December, end of August, whatever Sunday it was. On Tuesday, Judy Boyle and I started calling people like crazy. I want to thank everybody on this row, except for Tony Potts. Sorry, you weren't one of us yet. Everybody here on this row, and there's a few other legislators in the room who did sign the letter. A lot of the leadership. There's John Vandewouda. There is over there. Brent and Mike. I don't know where he's at. But anyhow, there's a lot of legislators, Jeff, that did sign off on that letter, and I really appreciate it. And if I've missed some of you, and I think I have, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. But anyway, the letter was signed. Raul Labrador put that letter in Sessions' hand. That wasn't the first letter I wrote. That was the second. The first letter I wrote on June 1st was not responded to until the middle of August. And it was from the U.S. Attorney General's Office Director. So I called him when I found out the possibility of a 3rd trial. I said, how many times do you try people? 5, 6, 7, 8. How many times do you try until you get the conviction you want? I don't know. I thought, really? Nobody knows? And so Sessions, he did get involved after Labrador delivered the letter. I know that U.S. Attorney Maury was contacted, and pretty soon after that, some plea agreements were being made. So I am optimistic that all these men will be released, because now we find out that the conspiracy was not on the sides of the Bundys and their family, but on the side of the federal government through the BLM and the Forest Service. So it is very important, I think, as Idaho legislators, we stand up. And I remember when someone told me this, and I don't know which founding father said it, but the person who best can protect the citizens of the United States from federal overreach of the federal government is your state legislator, or by golly, it should be your state legislator. So those of you who did stand up, I really appreciate it. I have no idea where the time is. 20 seconds. Okay, well, you can ask me about what bills I'm going to carry after we get finished. Thank you so much, and thank you for coming out, and God bless all of you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for all that you've done. Next up is Representative Christy Zito. She's from Hammett and represents District 23, Mountain Home, Murphy, and southeastern corner of Idaho. A mother, a grandmother, farmer, and business owner, and if you all know her, she totally leads from the heart, which I can relate with. She knows what it's like to have government regulations choke business. In her first year, she championed legislation for the Castle Doctrine, the right to protect your own property, and in doing so, the right to remain innocent until proven guilty. The establishment opposed her common sense legislation. I know we're all surprised by that. They abused their power by manipulating the bill process and instead created their own legislation to counter her efforts. She'll talk about the current broken process in Idaho legislature and what the conservatives are doing to restore the legitimate process. She will continue to fight for our constitutional republic so that all Idahoans have the opportunity for ideas of legislation to be publicly heard. Representative Zito.
Wow, look at this room, and what a pleasure it is to be here tonight. I'm going to cry, and those of you who know me know that that is what I do best. I am Representative Christy Zito, and I am a freshman legislator for the state of Idaho. My election could only be said that it was an act of God. When I won my race, people would come up to me, and they still do today, and they say, "How on earth did you do that?" And I have to say, I didn't. He did it. A lot of prayer. And a lot of divine guidance. Now, when I got to the legislature, I got a lot of good advice, which you do, which is always good, always good. I was told that as a freshman legislator, I should keep quiet, I should sit in my seat, I should do as I'm told, I should learn the process, I can learn how to get along with people. Well, I'm thinking about this, and I think, now, I've raised 5 kids, and 2 of them were daughters. Not only that, I employed probably 100 kids on the farm, and half of those farm workers were daughters. Or someone's daughters, not mine. And I taught them to work, and I taught them how to be involved and how to engage, so I think I can get along with people pretty good. So I thought about this for a minute, and then luckily, and this gentleman that gave me the best advice that I ever had going into the legislature just happens to be in this room tonight, and he'll recognize this when I say it. He told me, he said, "You will never be a better legislator than you will your first year." He said, because the power hasn't taken you over yet. Well, I will guarantee you that I'm not in it for the power. The power's not going to take me over. I serve at the will of the people I represent. And I think that's the most important thing a legislator has to remember. My seat has been with the legislature since the legislature began. My seat has just as much power as any seat in the House of Representatives. I have 1 vote that will represent the people in my district. Everyone from the speaker on down has 1 vote that represents the people of their district. And that is how the process was set up, and that is our responsibility to make sure that we elect people who will do that and maintain that and work towards that end. You're not there to be Christy Zito, legislator. You're there to be the face and the voice of the 35 to 55,000 people in your legislative district. I work for you. It's not the other way around. So last year I carried the Castle Doctrine bill. The Castle Doctrine makes it so that you don't have to prove that you had opportunity to retreat. If someone breaks into your home in the middle of the night, you don't have to prove that they're there to commit a felony. Because I can guarantee you when you're being attacked upon is not proper grammar, but when someone's coming after you in that way, you're not going to take time to ask them if they're there to commit a felony or not. You're going to protect your home. You have the right to protect your life, your liberty, and your pursuit of happiness. And in the Constitution, the pursuit of happiness are your possessions, because it are the things that you work for. The fruit of your labor is your pursuit of happiness, and the Constitution guarantees you that right to protect that. The Second Amendment also protects your right to protect yourself from a tyrannical government. The citizens of this country should be able to meet force with force. Amen. When the Second Amendment was written, they fought with bayonets and knives and long rifles and muskets. I actually have shot a black powder gun before, and let me tell you what, you would be hard-pressed to beat a tank with a black powder gun today. The citizens have a right to be armed in such a way that they can defend their liberty. But the Castle Doctrine doesn't address that. It just addresses your right to protect yourself, your home, and your property. Now, I was told Two things strikes against me from the very beginning. Number one, I was a freshman legislator, so a bill like that probably would not get a hearing because I was a freshman. Number two, I stood up for the First Amendment rights of every citizen in District 1 and the First Amendment right of every citizen in the state of Idaho. Because where would it end? Where would it end? I am not a respecter of persons. People who know me know that if President Trump walked in here today, there might be a chance I wouldn't recognize him, except that his face is everywhere. Other than that, I would shake his hand and treat him just like everyone else, because we are all God's children, created in his image, and none of us are any better than any of the rest. I am not a respecter of persons. So that rubbed me wrong, and I would not be able to get my castle doctrine heard because of that. Nevertheless, we persevered. I went to Chairman Lurcher's office many times a day. Oftentimes I didn't catch him there. Representative Hank Snow, she went with me. Representative Zollinger went with me. I think almost everyone in the House of Representatives on the front row here tonight went with me more than once. And there are others who went with me as well. We visited him every day. First, I was told there were language problems. So I had Alexandria Kincaid, who is one of the foremost Second Amendment attorneys in the United States. We are so blessed to have her in the state of Idaho. She actually wrote the legislation. She came in and spent an hour with the chairman. She wrote a 37-page explanation as to why this bill was good, solid legislation and why it would be good for the citizens of the state of Idaho. We still couldn't get a print hearing. So I would go every day to see if we could get a print hearing. In the course of all of this, I was able to get 20 patriots. And in my book, there is not a greater compliment I can pay anyone in this room than to call them a patriot. That means that you will stand for what is right, that you are not afraid to be counted, and that you are not afraid to be seen and heard and stand up for what is right. 20 patriots, a third of the House of Representatives. What this means is this. They are the representatives of those people in their district. I've got 1 minute. A third of the people of the state of Idaho wanted that doctrine to have a print hearing, and it didn't get it. So, I think it's important to remember this, and because now I'm out of time, I get to close. But I just wanted to say this. The most important concept that you leave here tonight from me is this. Your government has no right to do anything to or for you that your neighbor could not morally and ethically do to you. We grant power to the government. The government does not grant a right to us. We don't have time to police everything. We don't have time to catch the chicken thief. We hire the sheriff to do it in our stead. We grant him that power. We grant our legislators that power. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so proud of you for being here tonight. I am so proud of you for taking a stand. Stick up for your legislators. The only thing worse than someone who doesn't vote is an uninformed voter. We have some excellent people running for office this year. We have some patriots who are going to stand with us and be strong, and that is how we will take the legislator back, and that is how we will protect the liberty in the state of Idaho. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
But she's so mighty, right? Ooh. Okay, next up is Senator Foreman, represents District 5 from St. Mary's to areas of Moscow. He's been married for 42 years and has 7 children and 20 grandchildren. Oh, no. He retired in 2000 as a Vice Wing Commander of the 168th Air Refueling Wing in Alaska and is an 11-year veteran of the Moscow Police Department. He campaigned as a conservative Christian and supported pro-life legislation during his first session. Tonight, he will talk about his upcoming pro-life parents' rights, anti-sanctuary city, and health insurance legislative initiatives that he will address this session. He will also share how the media twists the truth and targets individuals. Senator Foreman, sorry.
be here. I am indeed a state senator, so they tell me anyway. My name is Dan Foreman. I represent Legislative District 5, that includes Benawa and Latah counties. Thanks for coming out this evening and for your interest in our legislative process. And thanks to everybody that assisted in setting up this event. I hope this is the first of many, because it's a good idea. I'm new to the Senate. Prior to coming to the Senate, I served for 30 years as an Air Force officer and an aviator. Upon retirement from the military, I served as a patrol officer with the Moscow Police Department for a little over 11 years. Retired from that in order to give full attention to my new Senate responsibilities. Now, my combined 41 years of military and law enforcement service has kept me in the company of patriots, people who believe in our U.S. Constitution and are willing to stand up in defense of same. I'm used to associating with dedicated professionals who believe in something bigger than themselves, people who still believe in the meaning of duty, honor, and country. That is why I'm honored this evening to be among this distinguished group of patriot legislators. They are, to a person, brave, patriotic, and civic-minded, and I don't throw those types of compliments out easily. In simple terms, they have guts, and I'm proud of them, every one of them. A few thoughts on my first session. You know, when you're new to something, you see it for what it really is. You see the good, you see the bad, you see the problems, you see issues, and after you're there for a while, everything starts to just kind of blend in and become the same old, same old. Well, I must say in many ways, I'm impressed with our entire legislature. Our senators and representatives seem to be concerned with delivering good government to the people of this state. However, I do have some concerns with respect to the legislature. And now these are just my opinion. You can take them for what they're worth. Number one, we seem to be overly concerned with the potential reaction of the executive branch to proposed legislation. We must remember our state government has 3 co-equal branches designed to function separately, but in concert as ordained by constitutional mandate. Quite simply, we should perform our legislative function as we see fit, and not concern ourselves with reaction by the executive branch. And next, we must remember to stand up for conservative values. Idaho is a conservative state. Its people are conservative. Most of our legislators were elected having run on conservative platforms, but then devolved to voting as rhinos during the legislative session. The statistics prove it, ladies and gentlemen, and please take that sheet home and look for yourselves. Legislators would be wise to remember conservatism is a way of life based on constitutional principles, whereas liberalism is simply an ideology based on big government, high taxation, and socialism in its many forms. Next, legislators must vote in accordance with their true feelings and beliefs. In my humble opinion, there is too much legislative reverence paid to purely political concerns with respect to hot-button issues like education, health care, and welfare. Here's my advice to the legislature, if I may be so bold, and I will be so bold. Let's grow a bit more of a legislative backbone, please, and vote the way we truly believe. I think the voters would recognize that and appreciate that. And finally, legislators must work to once and for all end the myth centered on separation of church and state. The separation does not exist, and it has never existed. The very concept is entirely juxtaposed to the intent of our founding fathers. Read their writings, folks. It's very clear. The myth of separation of church and state is nothing less than a tool of the left used to further the growth of a secular, godless, and socialist movement in America. Now, a little bit about my upcoming 2018 legislative agenda. We'll start with abortion. Last session, I attempted to introduce legislation abolishing the current statutory affirmative defense against the crime of murder as it relates to abortion. The killing of a fetus is murder under Idaho code, but our code also prevents prosecution for legal abortions. My bill received some private support in the Senate, but no official backing. I couldn't even get a print hearing in committee. Abortion is a contentious issue. People have strong feelings on both sides of this topic. Yet the people of Idaho have never been given the opportunity to voice their concerns via a general vote on this grassroots issue. I say it is time to put this issue into the highest court in our state, the court of the people. I propose to introduce legislation calling for a proposal to eliminate the defense from prosecution for abortion in all cases, reserving those necessary to save the life of the mother or fetus. My bill would place the decision to modify Idaho code to this effect on the general ballot in November of this year. I believe abortion is an abomination and a selfish waste of human life. But as a legislator, I say, let the people decide. It is time for the legislature to stop hiding behind Roe versus Wade, decided back in the 1970s. I think a few things have changed since then, and recognize that the state's rights of Idaho's people to decide this issue for Idaho. Next issue is the vaccination opt-out and parents' rights. I intend to introduce a bill clarifying the codified authority of an Idaho parent to opt out his or her public school child from the state vaccination program. Idaho code currently allows a parent to present to school officials a signed statement of intent to opt out of the vaccination program. However, some of our public school administrators are not following the law and are requiring parents to sign a health and welfare departmental form in order to remove a child from the program. My bill will give new teeth to the existing code and reaffirm to the bureaucracy that parents, not state bureaucrats, have control over their own children. You know, any attempt to ignore or curtail the rights of parents is pure overreach on the part of the state and should never be tolerated. I'm down to a minute, so I'm going to kind of fly through this. Health insurance across state lines. I'm going to introduce a bill enabling Idahoans to shop for and purchase accident and health insurance across state lines. The issue of health care and health insurance has been on the front burner for some time, and that is because we all need it, we all have to purchase it, and it's too bloody expensive. I hope to introduce increased competition into the Idaho health insurance market, thereby giving Idahoans more choice and selection in insurance products and better value for their premium dollar. It's time for all of this to happen. Sanctuary cities and universities, I'm running out of time, so I'm going to just sum it up. If a school, a state municipality, a public-funded university, or any other organization receiving public funds from the state of Idaho hinders, restricts, prohibits, or discourages its employees from cooperating with federal law enforcement with respect to immigration laws, then those entities will temporarily have all their state funding suspended until such time as their funding is complete. So I'll end it there because I'm out of time. If you let me go, you probably miss breakfast in the morning, but I'll move it on. Thank you for coming out this evening. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak. Please rest assured I will continue to stand up for your constitutional rights, to put government back in its place, and to protect our great republic and the people of the greatest state in this country, Idaho.
Is anybody out there inspired to run yet? Because we need some more senators, and we need all these seats up here full. Next up is Representative Heather Scott. She represents District 1, including Bonners Ferry and Sandpoint, our most northern district bordering Washington, Montana, and British Columbia. An aquatic biologist by profession and small business owner, she is in her second term and has been the tip of the spear in educating and engaging voters and pulling together a large group of politically active citizens to impact the legislative process. I've been a part of that, actually. She closely monitors and proposes state regulations, has been active with water issues in North Idaho. Representative Scott was instrumental in launching the Growing Freedom Agenda, which empowers people's ideas for legislation. She has been one tough woman standing up for the voice of freedom and the right of the people to be heard. Tonight, she will talk about the important conservative Republican issues in 2018 Freedom Agenda and offer her predictions about what issues we expect the top-down establishment to strong-arm through the coming session. Representative Scott.
This is an amazing crowd. Thank you for coming out tonight, and I just want to say a quick thank you to Parrish and Andrea for Read Out News for live streaming it. We have groups all around the state that are beamed in and that are watching us live right now through Facebook. And it's amazing, the people around the state, how exciting it is. I am going to stick strictly to my notes. Otherwise, I might offend somebody or say something to get me in trouble. That's what I'm guessing. So, you know, just about 3 years ago, there was 2 of us standing up on the House floor, speaking out against injustices and speaking up for the Constitution. And I look now, I'm so proud of these legislators in the front row. It is so amazing, and it is so hard to do, to stand up for what's right when you're constantly being attacked and marginalized by the establishment, by leadership, by socialists in the media, and everyone else in between. So tonight I want to talk a little bit about a website we have set up for citizens and legislators. It's called growingfreedom.com, and it includes our conservative agenda. There's cards like this over on the tables. Please stop by. If you grab one of these, there's ideas ranging from freezing residential building codes, repealing grocery tax, protecting unborn life, setting gift limits for legislators. There's something on this card for everyone. The website's awesome and it's simple to use. And the best part about it is every single bill that goes through the legislature is read by a team of citizen bill readers. So in case you're not aware, right now there's already 92 bills in waiting set up by the agencies, and there's a list of them over there on the overview. These are agency bills. These aren't from legislators. These are from lobbyist agency bills. And they will, likely 90% of them will pass, and I'm not reading, so that's not good. You know, the legislators, we look at about 600 bills a year, and about 350 of those will pass, and most of those are agency bills. They are not coming from the citizens or the people. The nice thing about this website, Growing Freedom, is citizens can put in their bill ideas, and Liberty legislators and others in the legislators have full access to it, and we can see what the people want, and it's just really a good place. The other thing about this website is you can enter where you see in your district government fraud and waste, and it's a good way to get stuff in front of the legislature down while we're in session. I think you'll really like it. I encourage you all to go to it. Moving right along. What we're expecting to see this session. Well, we're kind of used to that top-down system, and it's previously worked, but we are pushing hard to stop that. Last year, the speaker said an Article 5 convention bill was his priority, Article 5 or the Con. It didn't pass last year, so this summer, leadership handpicked 9 legislators, sent them down to Arizona for a week of wining, dining, and, you know, better understanding what it's all about. We will likely see this bill on the legislative docket this year. I'm sure it's going to be pushed again. The face of legislature will look way different this year because some of the people aren't returning, and many of the legislators are not rerunning. So I expect, don't be surprised if you see a shuffling of the committees. It's a proven method for leadership to be able to advance pet legislation or stop liberty legislation by who sits on those committees. And so it's a good thing to keep an eye on. There has been an attempt to change Idaho's definition of a victim in our Constitution. It's a bill you may have heard of called Marcy's Law. I actually saw advertisements for it out in the lobby from this place we're renting. So I believe legislators need to proceed with caution when we're trying to define group rights instead of individual rights. It's a slippery slope. It's creeping into our country and it's creeping into our state quite quickly, and it's very prevalent in socialist countries, as we know. The top-down establishment has been pushing to expand Medicaid with little legislative input, and we probably will see something slip through the appropriation bills, which we, as legislators, don't get to spend a lot of time on. We rely on the committee for that. And then don't forget it's an election year, so that means you're going to see look what I did for you, the citizens, I'm so great kind of bill. When you see that bill and how great your legislators are, or say they are, don't forget, this is the same legislature who doubled your vehicle registration fees, increased your gas taxes, inserted thousands of pages of federal code right into our state law, put international treaty language into our state code, and brought you the state healthcare exchange and Common Core, and I'm going to stop. So, know your voting records of these people. Know the voting records of your legislators. It's critical. What they say and what they're doing may be very different. So with the election of Donald Trump, I believe we have so much momentum and opportunity to change this road we're upon. I am so encouraged by the support and the excitement across the state by engaged citizens. I mean, we have 30, 69, but over 120 people that I'm aware of that are actually sitting and meeting at hotels and churches around the state watching us tonight. That's so encouraging. That being said, we need regular citizens like you all and you and the cameras who have common sense, who are not afraid to speak the truth and stand up for this truth. We need engaged citizens at all levels to step up, get involved, and run for office. I have seen at least I think I've seen 4 tonight. One of those citizens tonight, I don't know if I point her out, she might be embarrassed. She has chose to stand up to run against an 18-year career politician who holds a committee chair. And this is great. It's amazing. I'll give you her first name. It's Lori, but I won't tell you the rest until she's ready to totally announce. So thank you, Lori, for stepping up. Tammy Nichols is here. Zach Brooks is here. Glenita is here. We have candidates. We have an opportunity to replace every position in this state this year. And it is just amazing the opportunity we have. And we have to move when we have the momentum, and we have the momentum now. So I'm optimistic for the upcoming session. There are a lot of good citizen bills. Term limits might even sneak out, some freedom of speech stuff. Last year the speaker promised that he would hear our bills. We had a Freedom Caucus meeting, 24 people showed up, and I don't know why it slipped out of his mouth. So we're going to hold him to that this year. We want our bills heard. We want the citizens' voices heard, and that's all. I'm going to stop. My time's up. Thank you for coming out.
That lady inspires me. Representative Ron Nate from District 34, representing Rexburg area, is a dedicated husband, happy father of 4, and an economics professor at BYU. I had the opportunity to sit on a class that he did for teenagers and for kids, and I was like, can I please go back to college and just go to his economics class? Because he made it make so much sense. He's an intelligent scholar, a clear thinker, a common sense kind of lawmaker. In his first term, he was instrumental in passing important pro-life legislation and restoring Second Amendment rights with constitutional carry legislation along with Representative Scott. The well-funded establishment threw everything they had into the primary to get Representative Nate out of office in 2016, but despite being outspent, Representative Nate won re-election. As with other candidates on the stage, the establishment is already pushing hard to replace him in 2018 and hopes to retain their control of the legislature. We can't let that happen. During the 2017 session, Representative Nate kept running fiscal tally of overspending in the state budget and repeatedly pointed out how we could perhaps improve teachers' salary instead. Yet these figures appeared to fall on many deaf ears. Tonight, he'll give an economic professor's overview of the state budget and this year's overspending projections. Representative Nate.
Wow, this is a great night. I've already heard a lot of great messages. Who's ready for an economics lesson? Before I do that, Misty mentioned that I was outspent in my last campaign. It's easy to be outspent when you return lobbyist money. My opponent did not return lobbyist money, and the establishment was clearly backing him. I expect the same thing this time around. I prefer citizen support. I prefer business owner support. I prefer, the support of people that need a citizen legislator there, not a tool or a puppet of establishment. It is so good to work with this growing group of legislators. When I got there, it seemed like there were only 2 of us that were willing to talk about the Constitution and truly stand up for liberty. Now there's at least 9 of us here on the front row and a growing number. I feel this wave moving across Idaho, and I feel it moving across the country too. Idaho needs it. We are classified as a red state, but let me tell you, in terms of the budget and in terms of spending, we are far from a red state. Let me go through a few numbers here. You may have seen some charts around the room. Let me just, I won't bore you with my full economics lesson, but just a couple of things here. Here's the sources of revenue that come into Idaho. This top part, these top 4 bands, are the general budget, the general revenue that come from Idaho taxpayers. This is dedicated funds, which is special taxes, lottery funds, which go to dedicated purposes. And the bottom 35% here are federal funds. Now, the word federal funds makes it sound like we depend on the federal government for that money. However, remember, that money didn't come to the federal government through magic. It came from Idaho paychecks. In fact, when I suggest that maybe we shouldn't depend on federal money as much, people say, well, it's our money. How about this? Would it be so radical to say, instead of sending or withholding money to the federal government and then beg for it back with all sorts of strings attached, we held it here and let the federal government beg Idaho for that money? If you think that sounds radical, it's really not. Our ex-Secretary of State, Pete Senarusa, drafted just such a bill. When I went and asked LSO to draft it, I was shocked to find that there had already been a draft of it in the 1990s. We could do this. We could have a state withholding that we would then allocate to the federal government based on need. Also, another point on this. This band up here is the corporate income tax. Corporate income tax in Idaho is 7.4%. It only represents 2.8% of our revenues in Idaho, though. And you go 2.8%, that could be a lot of money. It's really not. The projected surplus this year in Idaho exceeds what money is coming from corporate income taxes. We could completely repeal the corporate income tax in 1 year and not have it hurt any of our revenues. Would that be amazing? The tax reform at the federal level reduced the corporate income tax rate from 39% down to about 22%. That sounds like a drastic cut, but it's still a higher rate than the average rate in Europe. Not only that, it doesn't include the fact that we have 7.4% added on top of that in Idaho. To be truly competitive in a world market, we ought to be able to lower that down to, say, 0. That would be great. Here's where the money goes. Health and Human Services, 37%. This shaded area is the amount that comes from the federal government. If you look at this, 37% of our spending is on federal programs where the federal government is paying us to administer what they decide. I don't remember any of that in the Constitution, yet 37% of our spending is on it. Education, 36%. Look at this tiny shaded area. Because of that, the federal government gets to tell us nearly everything they want us to do with education, that tiny percentage. I proposed a bill to wean ourselves off of that federal money. I was shut down immediately by the chairman of the education committee. He said, no way, we're not going to give up that money. We have a surplus that is 3 times that amount. We could give it up. All right, I'll bore you with the last chart. I colored Idaho red here. There's rankings here. This is the business tax climate as calculated by the Tax Foundation. Idaho ranks number 20. You go, 20, that's middle of the pack. Well, 5 of our 6 touching neighbors rank in the top 10. Washington is number 17. We, the red conservative state, are the worst in the region in terms of a positive business tax climate. We could fix that. Surrounding states, some have no sales tax, some have no income tax. Idaho has all 3, and it's higher than the only other one that has all 3. We can do better with our tax policy. There are a lot of opportunities to become more conservative. Certainly with our tax policy, certainly with our spending. When I came to Boise, I was concerned about whether I could be effective or not. You know, I had principles and I was committed to sticking to them. Like Representative Zollinger said, the pressure to sacrifice those principles is great, and it comes in ways that you don't expect. You know, typically citizens think, oh, they pressure you through bribes or whatever. No, the pressure comes as, do you want to be effective? Do you want to be part of the team? Do you want to have your bills heard? Well, we find that we don't get good bills if people yield to that pressure. We need strong legislators in Boise, ones that don't care about whether or not they're going to be reelected next time based on what establishment says they should do. And that's what we're having, more and more legislators like that. From time to time, I wonder, is it a battle worth fighting? Am I really making a difference? Have you ever had that thought? I have a room full of freedom, liberty people here. Have you ever wondered if you're making a difference? I went to an event before Christmas last month, and part of the event was the lead singer sang An Impossible Dream from Man from La Mancha. I want to read a few lines from that. It reminds me of the courage that those that came before us had to fight for the right without question or pause, to be willing to march into hell for a heavenly cause. And I know, if I'll only be true to this glorious quest, that my heart will lie peaceful and calm when I'm laid to my rest. And the world will be better for this, that one man, 9 legislators, a growing number, a room full of freedom people, scorned and covered with scars, still strove with their last ounce of courage to reach the unreachable star. I don't think it's unreachable. I think Idaho can reclaim its freedoms, can reclaim its liberty, but we need to fix the legislative process, we need to elect good people, and we need to have strong citizenry behind us, just like the Greeks that Mr. Smurs mentioned. I'm proud to be part of this, and I'm glad you came here, and keep up the good work. We can get this done. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Nate. Representative Carrie Hanks from St. Anthony and the large meandering District 35, Ashton, Island Park, Dubois, Arco. A wife, mother of 7, grandmother of 12, she cares about grassroots Idaho families. As a farmer and a school bus driver, she has seen the negative effects of big government on rural communities. Last session, she worked daily to simplify Idaho's gun laws to get Idaho's laws more aligned with constitutional carry. In response, the establishment pulled out their petty tactics against her by critiquing her wardrobe to belittle her efforts. They really have nothing when they go to the wardrobe like junior high a little bit, right? She has good information to share about Idaho Transportation Department's plan to install expensive wildlife overpass in eastern Idaho. She'll talk about the impact of 2018 election and how important it is to elect principled legislators of good character. Representative Hanks.
Is my wardrobe okay tonight? Ron 8 did great. He actually is one of the reasons why I ran, and I appreciate his encouragement a couple years ago when it was the furthest thing from my mind. As I was sitting here listening to these fellow legislators and friends, you said so many amazing things, and I appreciate so much the privilege it is to work with you. I've been asked what my favorite part of serving in the legislature is. And actually, what I love to do is I go and talk to our high school government students. I present them each a copy of the Constitution, and we go over a few things in it. I stress to them in their classroom, I kind of have a situation where I explain, and we have a republic and a democracy, because it's so important to know the difference. And so I do that with them. We talk about the Northwest Ordinance, and as Senator Foreman said, in the Northwest Ordinance, it talks about the students learning religion, morality, and knowledge. Those are the three types of education that they're to be taught. And I agree that we need to bring just God back into our schools. During the last session, I fought hard to expand our constitutional carry law. Presently, non-residents without a permit can carry a sidearm anywhere in Idaho except inside city limits. They can carry rifles and shotguns anywhere in Idaho, including city limits. There are other problems with our current concealed law. I'm grateful we have it, but we need to fine-tune it, including the definition of a resident and the border of city limits, other things too. So it's clear that we need to work on the current law. It's confusing to citizens and to law enforcement. The Second Amendment shouldn't end at our borders, or in this case, at the city limits. Representative Zito and I both were given the runaround last session, as she talked about. Our bills were basically, or our proposals were basically put in the shredder drawer. And this runaround taught me that the only way citizens' voices and ideas are going to be heard is for good people to step up and run for the legislature. The upcoming primary election on May 15th will be one of the most important elections for the future of Idaho, as was outlined by my friends here. There's a very real battle to turn Idaho blue, or in other words, into another moderate, middle-of-the-road, high tax and spend, over-regulated mess of a state. It is unfortunate that money is such a big part of politics, but it's a reality. Fundraising this year will be critical for conservatives, and I appreciate those who have helped me in the past. Last session in the House, we had really controversial issues. I think Representative Zollinger said that there were like 3 people away from getting the House back from progressives in many votes. And as of today, there are 7 open House seats. We need to get real conservatives elected. Please step up and work for those who are committed to liberty and expanded freedom in Idaho. Or consider running yourself. I chose to run in 2016 because I didn't agree with my legislators' votes. I've been told the establishment was blindsided by my victory. And I want you to know, as others have said, I totally acknowledge that God had a great hand in that victory, and I know and He inspired me with what to do, and those that were willing to help me, and it was just amazing. As the election was approaching, I was thinking, am I going to win this? And I was terrified. But I've had so many great people that have helped me, legislators that have helped me as I've enjoyed the first year of my service. I am a real life example of a true down-to-earth person that was elected, and I appreciate that. It's awesome to serve with these liberty-minded legislators and to know that there are those that have each other's backs in the legislature. I just want to talk about one issue that constituents brought to me. That is and this is a lands issue, similar, it coordinates with what Representative Moon talked about. The Idaho Transportation Department has a proposal to build 3 wildlife overpasses in Island Park at a cost of $3 to $5 million apiece, and this does not include the necessary fencing and maintenance of those fences. Now they want to improve the road, which we want that done, but numerous ultra-environmentalist groups are pushing for this huge waste of limited road and bridge money. If these are built, it will seriously infringe on private property rights and limit access for many recreational activities that occur winter and summer in our forest. In addition, those fences will ruin the beauty of this area. Other options have been recommended, which are much less intrusive and more cost-effective. But at the present time, work is being done behind the scenes to further this plan. I believe with enough pressure from citizens who choose to get involved and demand that instead the roads are improved, we can get this colossal waste of our precious road and bridge funding stopped, and the funds directed to where they are needed, and where it will do much more good for the safety of our citizens. This is one of the many important issues in which our agencies and our departments must be held more accountable with our tax dollars. And I just want to say that the key to positive change is our vigilance and willingness to be involved. As Thomas Jefferson put it, we in America do not have government by the majority. We have government by the majority who participate. All tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent. It is great that you're with us tonight. I am overwhelmed at your presence, and I can feel the power of our desire to change and make Idaho better. So it's great you're with us tonight. What are you going to do tomorrow?
Thank you so much, Representative Hanks. Now Senator Potts, who I don't know very well yet, but I will. He is from Idaho Falls and was appointed last fall to replace Senator Bart Davis of District 33. As a father of 6, he is actively involved and volunteers at many different faith and community events. He enjoys coaching, youth sports, and is currently vice president of the Cal Ripken Babe Ruth Board for Idaho Falls. His expertise as a business owner and precinct committee officer has given him perspective on the need for citizens to get involved in local government. Tonight, he'll share his suggestions on how Idahoans can get involved in the legislative process to keep Idaho strong.
Hi, I'm the new guy. I'm so honored to be here with you today. Been inspired by us, I'm sure you have, by all the speakers we've had so far. Senator Foreman, you have another man on your side when it comes to what happens there, but particularly on those vaccines. Once you've held your 18-month-old son in your arm as he seizes and his lips begin to turn blue from the effects of vaccinations, and then you take him to a hospital and watch him seize for an hour more. At that point in your life, you begin to ask yourself, why does the government dictate what I do with my child's health care? Not only do you begin to question that, but you begin to realize that you have to do something different. that the government has no responsibility in your child's health care and what to tell you to do. No responsibility in your child's education and how you choose to educate your child, and so many other parts of their life. The government does not belong where we do not want them to be. And I'm here to help them. So no more sad stories. By the way, he's doing great. He's taller than I am, he's smarter than I am, and he works harder than I do. So everything turned out okay. How do we get involved? Let me just tell you a little bit about my story. About 20 years ago, don't do the math, but about 20 years ago, I voted in my first election, and there was a man on there by the name of Bill Clinton and Bob Dole. And I realized at that point in time, my dad was a Republican, and that I knew, but I needed to do more education on my part. We get involved through education. When my wife and I moved to Idaho to go to school 15 years ago, the thought of being here at this point in our life never crossed our mind. Standing here before you today as a representative in the legislature for Idaho Falls, I didn't even know was possible. But a couple years ago, a friend came to me and asked me to get involved. And so I said yes. 2 years later, I stand before you as a representative for that legislative district in which he asked me to be involved. Our levels of involvement come in lots of different ways. It may come through the fact that we are going to choose to just go to the polls. We have neighbors that live on either side of us that have never been to the polls. It doesn't matter which side of the street they're on when they vote, there is no reason that every single one of our neighbors shouldn't be at the polls voting. A simple act of starting to go to my local county central committee meetings was a big impact in my life as I began to realize the real issues that our legislative district in the state of Idaho is facing. You can get involved simply by attending those meetings. I became a PCO, where I began to have a say in how our county central committee addressed issues or encouraged our legislators to address issues. You can get involved by seeking election. And then who knows, someday you may be the third guy on a list given to the governor, which by the way has no responsibility of picking any of you anyways, but you may end up on a list of 3, the last guy, and be the choice that he picks without ever getting a vote, to be honest with you. So with that in mind, the way that we get involved is by doing something. Whatever the next step in our progression of involvement is. Not everybody will be a legislator. I'm honored for the opportunity to be up here and to serve not only my legislative district, but the people of Idaho. Because though we vote, or though we're elected individually, we come together collectively to make the decisions that Idahoans want to make. And with your help, whether it be through that involvement, through showing up at hearings and testifying to what you know to be right, or to share your experience of things that have happened in your lives and how we need to get government out of our lives, you can affect change. So that's my challenge to you. Whatever your next step is in life, get involved and take that next step. Thank you.
Wow, I'm impressed. My husband and I moved to Idaho 3 years ago, and we specifically bought a home close to the state capitol with hopes of somehow getting involved in Idaho politics. And actually, I don't know if I'll ever run for office, but Priscilla and I had a brainstorm a few months ago. We need to do some sort of an event. So this evening really is a result of that chatter, and really has turned out to be an incredible evening. I think we have about 240 people here this evening, and we had no idea what to expect. So thank you so much for coming and to just encouraging the legislators, because they have quite a job ahead of us. I will have to say, isn't it interesting, all 9 of these representatives or legislators are bucking the establishment, but I'll have to say, when they saw the little orange sign that said 1 minute, they were all very compliant. So very nice. Well, this actually ends the official portion of our presentations this evening. They have agreed to hang around for about 15 minutes or so, well, 20 minutes, maybe till 9 o'clock, to take a few questions. Now, we do have 3 groups. We have the audience here. We actually have some questions coming from Redoubt News people, and then possibly also from satellite groups. So what I'd like to do is just take 2 questions from each group, and we'll cycle through and get as many questions as we can in 20 minutes. So if you have questions, Russ would like to get you a note card so you can write the questions down. And I'd like to invite the legislators to squeeze up here on the stage.
Questions?
Yeah, if you'd like to leave at this time, please feel free to do that. You can stop over at the table and get some literature. Also, if you'd be interested in helping offset the cost for the facility, again, there is a basket there for you to do that. John, is this mic working? Okay, there we go. All right, what we'll like to do while we're waiting for some questions to come forward, I do have one for the legislators. Actually, maybe I can stand here at the end. All right, so on a scale of 1 to 10, okay. Okay, smile, audience. Okay, so on a scale from 1 to 10, rate our current lawmaking process in the Idaho legislature. 1 will be the process is controlled by a few at the top, so top down, and 10 being the people are respected and heard, or legislation from the bottom up. So how would you rate our current legislative process in Idaho from 1 to 10?
I'll give it a 1.
2. 2.
1.
1.
Well, I would have to say a 1 because I carried the trailer bill for the cosmetology bill last year, and when I kept calling to see when it was going to get a Senate hearing, I kept hearing, I have to talk to leadership.
1 also.
Process can't get much worse. 1.
I'm an optimist. I'll go with 2.
It looks like we have some work to be done. Okay, second question. In the past, I have given money to the Idaho Republican Party. I learned that they use that money in some cases to defeat other Republicans. How can I make sure my contributions will go toward conservative causes?
Instead of donating to the party, instead of donating to the party, donate directly to the representative or senator or candidate that you choose. Then you know where your money's going. It'll all be on the Sunshine Report and clear and plain and transparent.
Okay, good. How many seats do you need in the... Any ideas there? Okay, how many seats do you need in the House to force a change at the top leadership?
I think it's really going to depend on this upcoming election, but with our current voting system, there were probably a handful of really close bills where conservatives lost by about 6 votes. And so if you do the math, we really need about 3 to 4 additional conservative legislators to change the tide in the House.
I'll just say, I sometimes say there's a lot of bobbleheads down there, and they just kind of vote how they're told. And if you get new leadership that's going a different direction, they're going to keep bobbling just the better way. So.
Okay, as we continue our questions, I would ask that we be quiet so that we can hear the responses. If you'd like to continue to converse, you can maybe go out into the foyer if you'd like to have a conversation. Thank you. All right, let's take the next question. Who in the legislature is monitoring the judicial branch of the state? Who in the legislature is monitoring the judicial branch of the state?
I think from the legislature, we have several monitoring. We pay attention to just about every Supreme Court decision that comes through. I think we're all active in voting for your local magistrates is important. I always tell people, unfortunately, if you're not sure who they are, just vote no. So just vote not to retain them, just in case, because we have several that don't need to be there. But I think most of us as legislators pay attention to what's going on in the judicial branch and are ready at any minute to set things right if they make a wrong decision.
It's a great question because I think it's actually a weakness right now in Idaho, and we have some conservative groups, even some lobby groups, who keep legislators accountable for the way they vote, but yet we don't have any groups like that really highlighting the judicial decisions. And so I would definitely encourage something like that, even citizens to get involved and start monitoring the judicial decisions.
Okay, so protection from federal government. Congress is currently working to pass education programs requiring states to build database systems tracking children from cradle to grave. Federal education purse strings are attached. How will you protect us?
First of all, the federal government has no business telling us anything with respect to how we handle education in Idaho. They should shut down the Federal Department of Education because it does nothing except spend money. Idaho's educational system belongs to you. The parents, the teachers, the students, belongs to Idaho's future. We need to get the feds out of our education system.
All right, this is directed for Dorothy Moon. Okay, are you aware of the process called coordination that stops government overreach concerning land use?
Yes, coordination is a tool that counties can use to force the federal government through the Forest Service or BLM to come to the county commissioners and say, hey, we want to close this road, but they can't close it unless they discuss it and if they're in agreement with it. Custer County is on the forefront. Fred Kelly Grant came in and gave a class to them, gosh, it was about 10 years ago. And so they do use coordination. It is a tool every county should be using to fight back on, again, federal government overreach.
Okay, how do you propose to cut government spending, agencies, staff, etc.?
We have a budget committee. It's called JFAC, Joint Finance Committee, and its job is to spend money, to appropriate money, but right now it's entrenched in the idea of spending and overspending and increasing spending. Idaho has been increasing its spending since the recession faster than the national average. Our red state of Idaho, increasing spending too much. We need to keep track of it. I keep track of it on the floor and I let the legislature know how much overspending is happening. They can choose to listen to that or ignore it and then face the voters in this next election. But I tracked 71 bills that I felt had some overspending in it, and it added up to $101 million in just one legislative session, and that's only what I found, sometimes with the help of like the Freedom Foundation, but that's just the things that I identified. And there's a lot more opportunity out there to save the Idaho taxpayers' money. It's interesting that the last thought on the budget maker's mind is returning surpluses to the taxpayer. They view that as an expenditure for some reason. And I will never get caught in the language of saying we can't afford a tax cut. Taxpayers cannot afford the spending, is the problem.
Folks, this is an issue that's near and dear to my heart because I'm a fiscal conservative. Idaho spends and wastes too much of your money. We have the perfect tool in place to stop executive agency overspending. It's called the state legislature. What we need to do is sprinkle some water on the legislature, have it grow a backbone, so that when it comes time to vote, it can vote no once in a while when it sees wasteful bills. I voted no 40% of the time on expenditure bills. Most of the time I was by myself. That's shameful. Stop worrying about re-election and start doing the right thing.
Representative Nate referenced the recession in 2009, and I was asking one of the legislators, said, so why are we hired, the legislature appropriated funding for 370 new employees this past year, 370 new state and the agencies, departments, and I asked someone, why are we doing that? Why are we, our state seems to be running okay the way it is. And they said, well, we need to get back to pre-2009 levels of employment. So that's what I was told. And that includes PERSI, includes medical benefits, includes 3% cost of living and other things that we're doing. And I just think we need to not be building our state agencies and have the money, as they said, back at the local level. Law enforcement, for example, I have a chart that shows most of our deputies, at least in our rural area, they make $15 to $18 an hour for law enforcement. And to me, that's a tragedy. And I realize that they pay that at the county level, but if we're not taking so much and spending it the way that we think is best, and cut it back to the local level where they can spend it for our law enforcement, because I totally believe they need to be paid more.
So I just wanted to say one thing a lot of people don't understand is all the bills that come through JFAC, they're big packages. There's tons of appropriations for tons of different programs, and it's kind of like an all or nothing. And there'll be something good in there, but you may hate 90% of it. A school bill, you may hate 90% of it, but the good part, if you vote no, the media and the establishment, they all pump it up. You hate children. You hate our schools. So it's hard when you know it's going to pass anyway, and you're always voting no because there's so much garbage in these bills. Sometimes it's just not worth the battle, but we have to be stronger on it, and we have to take some of these appropriation bills and chunk them down into smaller portions so we can see the parts of them we don't like and get them out of that bill.
I'll take one more response to this question. She's my boss.
Just want to point out, volunteer. Just want to point out back to that product of committees, and I know they're all out, but if you look me up on Facebook, I will happily send you a copy of this. If you look right here in the middle, you can't see it, but if you've got pilot eyes, you can see the colors. You've got the Appropriations Committee. There's one red person. And in that Appropriations Committee, they do not take any public input. It is the only committee where no public input is allowed.
All right, next question. I'm a small-time landowner. There's a new landlords association that's planning to propose legislation that will force me to join and will reduce the rights of my rental by taking away the process to evict. I can already evict for non-payment in less than 2 weeks. How can we prevent homelessness while protecting small business?
That is a great question. And the reality comes down to people have to be held accountable for the way that they impact our businesses. As we talk about renters specifically, I'm sure whoever asks this question, I can spend countless hours talking about nightmares and horror stories. I recently had a property management business that had 85 businesses, 85 units. We're going to be doing some things, if we can get the bills out of the drawers, that are going to make it easier for business owners with rentals to be able to handle situations where they're being taken advantage of. I'll just share with you one experience I had. A guy was able to stay in his house for 3 months longer than he should have because of the government process to evict. So our renters, they're protected. The laws are there. It's time now we protect small business so that you can rent to people who will pay you and need homes rather than those that sit around and live off of your dime.
Okay, so what are your feelings on how Boise Chief is trying to stop the sale of fireworks, and what can you do to stop the governor or the government from taking our rights to sell fireworks?
Nobody wanted it, so. You know, I was in the committee that bill came through. It's being pushed by the Democrats. I think it's being pushed by the urban areas. And I don't think, do you remember the statistic, how many people live in the rural areas versus the urban? I think it's like 98% most of Idaho lives in rural areas. So I think that's coming from a small vocal few. I don't know it's a huge problem. Go ahead.
It was a protectionist bill because there would be no way that we could stop it other than to hurt those who do not live in specific. Because you can sell fireworks on the reservations and then take them off and light them up. So if we can't sell them when we're not on the reservation, then it's a protectionist type of bill to protect a specific area of commerce. So if we limit it off that site, then we're limiting and telling businesses, we're not creating a level playing field.
And just as a principle of freedom, that if you're willing to take the responsibility of bad things that might happen, then you ought to be able to make the decisions that you want to make, so long as you're willing to pay the consequences. And by knowing that, people are going to take the proper precautions. Right now, that we feel like that we need to protect everyone all the time. And so we're willing to take away and sacrifice a lot of our liberties because government says something is not safe for us or something is not right for us. If I want to light fireworks and I'm willing to take the responsibility for that and be a responsible user, I ought to be able to do that. I get very nervous when government comes in and thinks they know better for me than what I know myself.
All right. The next question is for Representative Moon. There were many mining claims in Clearwater Nez Perce. Over 130 claims have been invalidated. Most were owned by, what's that? Out of state. Oh, out of state, okay. So the miners could not contract Idaho? Okay, oh, okay. Okay, so your question is? Okay, so are you willing to help them fight for the rights to the rights of the people to mine? Okay.
Yes, and I would fight for anybody's grazing rights, water rights, mining rights, you bet. And those patented mining claims are the highest order of land ownership. So I don't know how that happened, but I'll talk to you afterwards. Okay, I'll talk to you as soon as we finish. Thank you.
And I'm your representative, Clearwater County. Just had a 2-hour conference call yesterday with DEQ. And there's going to be a lot more support coming down now that we have a new director of the EPA and a new president.
Okay, well, our time is up. Thank you very much for hanging around for the questions. Are you going to be around for a few more minutes in case individuals like to talk with you? Okay. I do have one other request, if you're willing. In order for us to clear the facility, we've been asked to stack our chairs, but just in 4 high. So if you are inclined and would like to do that to help out, that would be much appreciated. Thank you.
I will. All right, so I just wanted to share a little bit of the group that we have here today. A lot of people did get up and leave. This whole room was completely full with people standing all around the outside, and we had people out in the foyer. So we'll kind of get a picture of what we've got going on here.
Can I give Hammy Hill a shout out?
There you go. So we've got a giant group of people here today. Amazing. And that's all we've got for you tonight.